So here's confession, and then we will begin. There is a whole lot of Eleazar in the Bible. So my little trivia question, and please raise your hand. I'm going to begin by reading from one of the Gospels, just a short phrase, and why is Eleazar mentioned, but we're going to be discussing Eleazar in the Old Testament. So anyone who guesses, and no fair looking in your Bible where I'm reading from, so I'm going to have Joe be in charge of what hand goes first, and here's what I'm reading. Now, no cheating. And I shall begin. And Azor, the father of Zadok, and Zadok, the father of Achim, and Achim, the father of Eliud, and Eliud, the father of Eleazar, and Eleazar, the future of Mathan, and Mathan, the father of Jacob, and Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. Remember my Bible with all my marks. Where am I reading in the Gospel of Eleazar? Anybody? I see a hand. Okay, 2 hands. Okay, both of you, talk to me. Talk to us.
I don't know. I would say Matthew.
I'm guessing Numbers.
No, I'm reading. I just read from that we are going to be in Numbers today, but I was reading from the New Testament, one of the Gospels. It's just a little joke trivia.
Louise said Matthew.
Oh, okay, Louise. Okay, you are right. So that's just like a little trivia for you. And so there are a lot of Eleazars. So we are going to focus this morning on reading and starting with the journey. So I need you to put yourself in Egypt, and you are journeying with Moses, and you are in Exodus, and you are going to the promised land. So that's where we're going to begin this morning. So the belief is these stories that we're going to read out of Leviticus and then out of Numbers were written at the time of the Babylonian exile. So they're about 500, 600, 700 years after the truth of these stories took place. So, that's important in the context. So we're going to talk about Eleazar. We're going to look at this Levite priest family tree so you can kind of see where he comes from, and more importantly, where his son goes in the family tree. We're going to look, as usual, at a little bit of geography so you can travel as we talk about this story and discuss it. You'll kind of know where we are in the Middle East. And we're going to talk just a wee bit about the book of Leviticus, but we're going to really concentrate in the book of Numbers, which I don't know about you, but when you look at it, it's numbers and counting and people and tribes. But when you dig in deep, especially when you're following the story of Eleazar, you can see that embedded in Numbers are stories and rituals and rules and ways of life that the Israelites carried with them until they get to the promised land. And the end of Numbers is when Joshua is just about ready to cross the Jordan. And then finally, I think importantly, I really wish we could have had a pre-Bible study on, so what? Why are we studying this ancient Levite priest and his journey with Moses and Aaron and others? Why is that relevant today? And maybe you'll give me new eyes, because I saw some relevance today, but I'm hoping through your eyes I can see a better relevance of why studying this is important. Okay, so we're going to begin by looking at the family tree. Okay, so we're talking about Eleazar. So he's down toward the bottom. I'm going to put my cursor on him right here. But what I want to do is start at the top. so you can see where we are, because remember I began by saying we're starting already with the Exodus. That's where we meet this Levite priest. So here's Jacob, and this is what is important, okay? And this name is important, Kohath, because that's going to be an important family name that allows Eleazar and his son specifically to remain as the blessed priests who travel with the Israelites. Then you're going to come down to Amram, who is the father of Moses and Aaron and Miriam, the sister. So this is Moses's brother, and excuse me if this is all old knowledge, forgive me. It's going to take me, I think, at least a year to know where all our bases are. But here we are. And Aaron has 4 sons. We're going to talk a wee bit about what happens to those 2 and why Eleazar and Ithamar, the 2 remaining sons, become part of our story. Not so much Ithamar today, but very much so Eleazar. So we're going to talk about what happens to them, and then we're going to talk about Eleazar. And at the very end, we'll talk about Phinehas, his son. But what I want to digress just for a moment, okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see if I can do that. What I want to digress for just a moment, I never really felt an understanding or even thought about the word tribe. Okay, for 15 years I taught American history and I taught about Native Americans. I traveled out west with my students, but that was seeing a Native American tribe. I never understood it. But when I moved to Africa and lived there, and even my life with the Palestinians, that is tribal living. Who you are, where you came from, where you're going, totally is part of your identity. If I am going to marry, I'm going to marry within my tribe. And so it's an identity, it's a security, it's a bloodline. It's very important. And what we'll find in the book of Numbers, especially when you're so excited after this class and you're going to read the entire book of Numbers this afternoon with your cup of coffee, or tonight after 5 o'clock with your glass of wine, what you'll find is also too about the tribe is land and possessions. Those things are divided according to your tribe. So much so that God, through Moses, tells people which is going to be their land and where this tribe is going to go. As you know, there'll be 12 tribes of Israel, but it's beyond that. And even carrying this forward to my life in Tanzania, and I can't speak for other parts of Africa, but what was important there was, what was my tribe? Well, I'm from Houston, Texas. That doesn't work for tribe. But so carry that with you this morning, because when we're reading this narrative, particularly in Numbers, and even so in Leviticus, which is basically a set of rules and guidelines and rituals for priests, what's important is it has to do with your name and who God has called you to be. And then what does God want you to do, what you should not do, and then carrying those forward. So that's important. It would be easy to judge that as wrong or different. Well, it may be different than how we are now, but I'm going to suggest at the end of class that we are tribal. So we'll go there in a few minutes. Okay, let's start with Eleazar. So we're going to start just a wee bit of our beginning is going to be in Exodus. And I'm reading Exodus 28, just verse 1. Then bring near to you Aaron. Remember, Aaron is Moses' brother. Your brother and his sons from him, from among the people of Israel, to serve me as priests. Aaron and Aaron's sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Then we're going to jump forward, and something happens to two of the brothers, the older brothers. And the other thing I learned in living in Africa, which is so true in this Old Testament narrative, is the pecking order is very important. The gender and the pecking order are any of you gentlemen firstborn in your family? You may be, firstborn. Now, you know I love everybody else and they're all equal to me, but the firstborn male in a Wagogo tribe today, which is who I lived with, and Eleazar's time as well, the firstborn, especially, don't even count if it's a daughter, the firstborn son is important. So you gentlemen are raised up. But in the story of Eleazar, these two brothers, the older ones, mistrust God, I think is the way that I would explain it. What happens is that, I'm reading from Leviticus in chapter 10. Now Nadab and Abihu, those are the older brothers, the sons of Aaron, each of them took his censer, and the censer is at that time is like a metal plate, is the best way to explain it, and laid incense on it and put fire, and offered the unauthorized fire before the Lord, which the Lord had not commanded them to do. So I think if we take that apart just a little bit, we'll see that God is telling them what to do. He's giving them guidance. He's giving them rules. He's giving them rituals. And very much of a ritual is a sacrifice. And these two older sons have done something that God has not asked them to do. And remember, they're part of the big tribe. They're Levites. They're part of the big tribe. They're the sons of Aaron, who's the brother of Moses. And they have misbehaved. Now, what I'm going to tell you is maybe a little bit upsetting, but the truth of the matter is they did wrong. And they're killed. And they're gone by the edict of God. And the question for us is, first of all, it raises Eleazar. Okay, he's then the third born son. He becomes the leader. But what's important, I think, and difficult when we see people die under God's hand is, did they die for the good of the community? They had done something wrong. They're priests. They're ordained. They're blessed. And they have done something wrong. And for the good of the broader community, they have been killed. So for myself, I find that very hard. I don't see a vengeful God. But if you look at it in terms of community, that might be a better understanding. As an example to others, not always do good, but trust in God. And they did not. Maybe Reverend Joe has something to add to just that notion of trust. Okay, so now we're going forward, and Eleazar is now sort of the next in command, right? He's now gone in to be the older brother. And in Leviticus, basically in chapter 10, you go through rules of priesthood. That's usually how we sort of label, as best you can say, as Eleazar as the priest. This is a manual of what you can do and what you shouldn't do. So it's a ritual. How do you provide for the elements? How do you provide for the sanctuary? But what's really important at this point in Leviticus, they're traveling, right? They're on their way on a journey, and their tabernacle, the 10 commandments, all of that has to go with them. And when they get to their stopping places, and there's sort of 3 stopping places, one in the Transjordan, one in the Sinai, one in the Transjordan, and then finally, of course, we hope in the land of Canaan, these things have to go with them. And so Leviticus gives out roles, God gives out roles through Moses of who's in charge of what. So what does that remind you of about wanderings and travelings and taking your worship spaces with you? How can anybody here at all relate to that? I see Amanda just laughing away. Talk to us.
Well, it must be us.
Exactly. Exactly. It was the job to be done, okay? And Eleazar has a very specific job, and he's in charge of the elements. He's in charge of the incense. He's in charge of the urn. All those things are commanded unto him, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, but it does to you because it's wandering. They're a wandering group of people for 40 years. And so this is important to understand in Leviticus, and he gets the rules. And what's important is that when you read in Leviticus and you read about Eleazar, you're reading about the wanderings of the people, okay? But with them wanders their rituals, their sacraments, and God. And what I find interesting for resurrection, that's why you need to get your story out there. Maybe you need to call it the Exodus of resurrection, is you wandered, right? Not wandering and not knowing where you're going, but you moved. I think you had 5 places of worship, is that right? Somebody show me your hand. I only met you at the Wilderness House, but you were in the chapel?
Well, there was 11, but who was counting?
There were 11
Yeah.
spaces. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But your things traveled with you, and that is Eleazar. So right away, you see that Moses, his brother Aaron, and Moses' nephew, Eleazar, are going to be a constant. Even though they're traveling, these are their constants, okay? And that's an important theme because they're going to be separated from their homeland, as you were, resurrections, but they're going to get to their new homeland. Remember, because they are the people of God, they are the Israelites. Okay, now we're going to move to Numbers. And in the book of Numbers, there's a census right at the beginning. There's a census kind of in the middle, and there's a census at the end. And Eleazar is very much a part of it. And I remember when I went to the new church, or the church, and Joe took me into the office, not her office, but the sort of the community office there in the breezeway. All I saw were boxes. And I could just tell, wow, here we go. Now we're going to set this up. So imagine for a moment that was also a census. Where are the people? Where are the cattle? Because remember, they're moving through the Sinai. They're moving through the Transjordan and up to the east side of the Jordan River, and all this stuff has to go with them. So actually, you got it kind of good, Joe, because you didn't have to bring your food with you. That was provided, and you didn't have to bring your water and you have electricity, so you had water of your faucet, but that's not so. And so God, through Moses, gives them certain chores. And Eleazar, as the priest, and his father is still alive at the beginning of Numbers. The first thing about Numbers, I mean, honestly, confessionally, I skipped through all the names and the numbers, but I tried to understand the big point. They need to know where things are, because that is their tribe. Remember, it's tribal, and that's their wealth. Their cows, their sheep. They don't have any land, okay, because they're nomadic at this point. But they have their tabernacle and they have their tent. And that's what they're going to erect. Sort of like, I don't know if there's any Eagle Scouts among you gentlemen, or I don't know what they call Girl Scouts when you become like an Eagle Scout, but when you go camping, bring it all if you're, pretty good at that. And so that's what this is like. This is like camping, but for a long, long time. And so Eleazar is given certain specific tasks. And where we begin to read about these is in the book of Numbers. So you have a census, and they're in the Sinai, and they have left Egypt. So we are going to read, or I am going to read for you a little bit in Numbers about the tabernacle, because the tabernacle is important, and the jobs that Eleazar are given is important. Eleazar, the son, I'm reading from Numbers chapter 3. Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, was to be chief over the chief of the Levites, and to have oversight of those who kept guard over the sanctuary. He was appointed over those who were responsible for the care of the sanctuary. So Eleazar has a really, really important position. Even if you're a Levite, even if you're a member of the tribe, you cannot look at the elements unless they are covered by Eleazar. So it's a very, I hate the word prestigious, I think rather sacred position. And I think an analogy for that even happened this morning. So there were enough people at the 8 o'clock worship service that we didn't have enough consecrated pieces of bread. Wow, that was a wonderful surprise. But there is a priestly role that is very, very much a blessing. And sometimes it makes me cry. Luckily, I didn't do it. Joe did it. She walked over very sort of gracefully behind the altar and consecrated the new pieces of bread that were not yet blessed. And so if you can think of that job, and it was covered, so she had to uncover the tray, think of Eleazar and that he is in charge of keeping care of those inner parts of their ritual services, so much so that other people cannot even look upon it. So that's his first job in terms of taking the tabernacle and traveling, because remember, they're traveling people. So he's also responsible. Now the Lord, I'm reading now from Numbers 19. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer without a defect, in which there is no blemish, on which a yoke has never come." Just 1 second, excuse me. "And you will give it to Eleazar, the priest. And it shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered before him. And Eleazar, the priest, shall take some of it as blood with his finger, and sprinkle some of its blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. Why are things done 7 times in this specific case? What's the deal with the number 7? Anybody have a guess? How many days of creation? So it's a holy number. And so Eleazar does it 7 times outside the tent. "And the heifer shall be burned in his sight. Its skin, its flesh, its blood with its dung shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet yarn and throw it into the fire, burning the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in the water. And afterward he may come into the camp, but the priest shall be unclean until the evening. The one who burns the heifer shall wash his clothes in the water, bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. So this goes on to talk about the way in which, the reason I read this specifically, this whole notion of sacrifice. Sacrifice of a ram, remember that's who is sacrificed. Abraham sacrifices instead of his son, and now you have a heifer, and you're going to have other sacrifices. We don't do sacrifices anymore, right? But why? What is that analogous to? Why is Eleazar, specifically, not just Eleazar, why are we talking about sacrifices? Where are we with sacrifices today in our worship service? No? So we don't have sacrifices, but we certainly give our offerings to God. Is that not true? Some of you, I heard when I was, when my visual was not on the Zoom meeting, but I was listening to you as I was getting all my papers ready. I think some of you come on Saturday and work in the church and set things up for Joe and the altar party. That's a sacrifice. Yeah, that's your giving. Some of us tithe, some of we give our monies to the church. So that's a sacrifice. But we're back in the year, 1200 BC. We're a long time ago. And this was your gift to God. And this is even what Jesus would sacrifice. If they had money, maybe a goat, but probably it was just a dove. So it's part of their ritual. And remember, Eleazar is the consistent person, along with his father Aaron before he dies, and Moses. This is the consistent ritual. These are the practices. These are the leaders of the worship. They're going to keep going with them on their wanderings. So that's an important notion. So he has just gone ahead and sacrificed this heifer because of sin. And I'm going to finish reading. The man who gathers up the ashes of the heifer must also wash his clothes, and he too will be unclean till evening. This will be a lasting ordinance, both for the Israelites and for foreigners residing among them. So again, it's the ritual of sacrifice, but also as spelled out in Leviticus, which remember is a lot of priestly rules. I think Joe would agree with that. But now we're in Numbers, and it's this same rhythm. When there is a sacrifice, you're unclean. So one notion, one sort of practice that I have not seen at Resurrection, but I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but in the previous church that I served in Jerusalem, I was not allowed to be a priest, but I could be an acolyte. Sometimes I was allowed to wash the hands of the priest before the Eucharist, because the notion is that that's sacred water and that's cleaning. So again, it's that purification that Eleazar, in this regard, it's because he's had to deal with the death of the heifer, but it's that ritual cleansing that they're now taking with them that Eleazar is talking about. So again, I'm going to show you the geography, because the Exodus moves through to the lands of Canaan in sort of three sections. The Sinai I'm going to show you, then the Transjordan, then you're going to get the east side of the Jordan River. So if you just be patient 1 second, I'm going to get the map, hopefully. Okay, is everybody looking at a map? It says the Exodus falls. Yes? Okay, so here they are in Egypt. They've left. And I think I can make that a little bit bigger. So you're going to follow. There were several ways they could have gone, but Eleazar, along with his father Aaron and Moses and the tribe, are going to travel down here to the Sinai. And then they're going to come up here to the Transjordan. Then they're going to come, and by the way, there's several battles, bloody battles, along the way. We'll talk about those in a moment. And they're going to get up here to Moab, the land of Ruth. And they're going to come up here. Moses is going to die. And they're going to travel across. Here's the Dead Sea. And you can't really see it here. Here's the Jordan River. They're going to cross the Jordan River and make it to Jericho. And this is the land of Canaan. So all this travel, Eleazar is with them. Aaron will die, his father. Eleazar will be commissioned as the head priest, as you will, because remember, he's the firstborn now. And then he will be up here, and Moses will die. Miriam has died as well, forgive me. And he will travel with Joshua, appointed leader, after Moses dies, and he will cross the Jordan. So I just wanted you to sort of sense this notion, certainly in Genesis and in Exodus, and not so much in Leviticus. I didn't feel that sense of wandering, but in Numbers, you really feel that sense of wandering. And all along, Eleazar has certain jobs that are very, very privileged because
That
he's
sense of
with
what?
the tabernacle.
Wandering?
I'm sorry?
Oh, wandering. Gee.
I think the question was wanderings. And I call them wanderings, but you know, it's a journey. It's a journey to the promised land. But wanderings in the sense that they could have gone this way. They could have gone this way. They could have gone this way. Okay, so we are in, which I think is important because there's a large span of time. We're now in chapter 20 of Numbers. So remember at the beginning of Numbers, they take a census and they count the people, the sheep, they count everything they have, and it's a census and it's important. Then in the middle, you're going to have another census. And they're going to count again because what they're preparing for is a new generation of people based on mistrust of God along the way. I think you're all familiar with their questioning Moses and questioning what God is telling them to do. And the bottom line is that generation will die. And the new generation, of which one is which, Aaron and his son Eleazar, and Ithamar as well, they will be the new generation birthed that go across the river. So we're in chapter 20, and I just want to read just a little bit about the death of Aaron because it shows the appointment, if you will, of Eleazar. The whole Israelite community set out from Kadesh, that's right in the middle, that's the Transjordan, and came to Mount Or. At Mount Or, near the border of Edom, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I give to the Israelites because both of you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Get Aaron and his son Eleazar and take them up to Mount Or. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. For Aaron will be gathered to his people, and he will die there. Moses did as the Lord commanded. They went up to Mount Or in the sight of the whole community. Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. And Aaron died on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, and when the whole community learned that Aaron had died, all the Israelites mourned for 30 days. So the question that I want to put forward is, what's important at this point about this disrobing, this ritual, if you will, of disrobing Aaron and robing Eleazar? You're people that have been wandering. You've been moving for several years. What ritual has stayed with you that has to do with your priest? What beautiful ritual has stayed with you? Who robes? Who puts vestments on no matter where you are worshiping? And I'm saying, oh, I don't have my vestments with me. They're in my closet. Even if it's just
A stole.
Just a-
That's what we did all
Yes.
summer when we did Camp
Okay.
Resurrection on the grass. Yes.
Oh, I didn't come to Camp Resurrection.
No.
I
Man, it
am
was
so
fun.
sorry. I bet it was.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but so that's so beautiful, because do you see that was a ritual? I realize Joe is not on Mount Orange. She's not going to die, and she's not passing it on.
Thank God.
But thank heavens. But that stayed with you, that ritual of robing. And I actually grew up Presbyterian. So when I went to seminary, and before seminary, I became an Episcopalian. I was just taken away, and I went to a high church, taken away by the vestments and the robe. But that ritual is a part of me. It's an expectation. I realize I'm a priest now, but before I was a priest, that beautiful wearing of a robe, and that's what's happening. But remember, resurrection people, this is part of your book. You just moved. You just finished a long journey, and so have these Israelites. And now someone has died. Aaron has died. And yet, do you see how this ritual that Eleazar is now bringing forward it's security, right? It's part of your faith practice that you can have even when there is a change. And the fact that Aaron has died, and pretty soon Moses is going to die, but they carry. So it's if you look at it in that way, I know this was 4,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. You're doing the same thing.
Well, yeah. In fact, our first rector, Jim
And
Green,
you're passing it on.
the beloved, had a chasuble that said joy on it. Do many of you guys remember that? I've seen a picture, and
Oh my
when
God.
he retired, he had one
Oh
chasuble,
my heavens.
and it said joy, and he was very joyful in it, And when he retired, he passed that on. It's sort of like handing it over.
Is it? And you have it, do you?
No, I wish I did. I don't know what happened to it between
Oh.
him passing it on and here. It probably got old during it. But Linda might know. She has her hand up.
I did, because
Linda.
there was another ritual. It just, when you said all that, it hit me that Joe got for us. Well, Joe helps us get us the seminarians. We always had a seminarian, and a few of them became priests during our time in the wilderness. And that was another concept of there being that future, that the priesthood would continue no matter where we're
lovely. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Because I'm already in
Susan, I think.
seminaries. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, Susan. We think that the important rituals that the Res Church has maintained during the pandemic is that it keeps worshiping together and ministering to each other and to the community in a really amazing way that I think a lot of other churches have not been able to do. So it's been a blessing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure if we could all have a hug session together, we would, all of you must feel that in different dimensions in your heart. And I think, again, there's some wisdom in our studying the whole Testament, especially the book of Numbers, which I know you are going to read in full this afternoon. You will love that part of it, that it's carrying some of these, I think, quite frankly, I'm afraid to say this, ridiculous little set of guidelines for priests, but in the broader sense, you get it. It's a ritual, and in this case, it's Eleazar. His father's gone. So, okay, let's move if that's okay, because I need to get you to the Jordan River so you can cross over to the land of Canaan. So remember, I told you they're going to have another census. Okay, so I'm all the way up to chapter 26 in Numbers. Chapter 26, verse 1. After the plague, the Lord said to Moses and Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, take a census of the whole Israelite community by families. All those 20 years old or more who are able to serve in the army of Israel. So on the plains of Moab, by the Jordan, across from Jericho, Moses and Eleazar the priest spoke with them and said, take a census of the men 20 years old or more, as the Lord commanded Moses. These were the Israelites who had come out of Egypt, the descendants of Reuben, the firstborn son of Israel, and then it goes on and it lists all these people. So what's important is that they're approaching Moab. So here's the Jordan River, they're on the east side. They need to get on the west side because that's the land of Canaan. But along the way, which we haven't covered this morning, and we could spend hours talking about tribal conquest and tribal warfare, particularly the Edomites do not allow them to cross. It's one big battle after another. And so as God's people of peace, you wish, they're not. And there's warfare, there's killing. And so that's what's happening along the wanderings as well, up until the moment when they're up on Mount Nebo, which is a high point when you're in Moab, and you can look down on the Dead Sea. You can look over the River of Jordan, and on a clear day, you can see as far as Jerusalem. So that's where they're headed, but it hasn't been easy street. Okay, it's not, pick up your tent and get moving, Eleazar. It's encountering an enemy tribe that wants your land, wants your women, wants your people, wants your cattle, and they have to create an army. So that's what he's talking about them. And one of the battles is at Midian, and I'm going to read to you just so you get a sense of Eleazar. He's the priest, but he is a part of this contingent that need to prepare for battle. I'm in chapter 31. The son of Eleazar, and remember from the family tree, is Phinehas. Moses sent them into battle, 1,000 from each tribe, along with Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, who took with him articles from the sanctuary and the trumpets for signaling. So what I haven't discussed today, I'm sure at another time we can, is what's in the tent of meeting. And one of the things that's really important is the horn. It announces your arrival at the battle, your departure. It's very, very important. They fought against Midian as the Lord commanded Moses and killed every man among their victims, and then they list all the victims. So the reason I mention that is, I don't know, maybe Joe, maybe you agree or disagree, but I don't really see Eleazar as part of the battle scene. I see him more at the beginning, maybe blessing the contingent of soldiers, for lack of a better word. But nonetheless, what's important is Eleazar is there. He is there blessing the battlefront, blessing the conquest and the bloody conquest. So that's important as well. Then Moses gave orders about them to Eleazar the priest. And now you are on the east side of the Jordan River. And you are with Moses, and Moses already knows he is not going to make it to the promised land. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? After this journey, But who will make it to the promised land is Eleazar. His father is gone, Miriam is gone, Moses will be gone, but Eleazar will accompany Joshua across the river, and he will journey with them. Again, I don't know if he's full of battle gear. I don't think so. But he goes with them and he will make it. And he will die in the current area known as the West Bank in Samaria. And his space, the area in which he dies, is a venerated holy space by Samaritans, but it isn't, you are not allowed to go there now. It is a very dangerous area. So I have never been. I've been in the region, but you cannot go to the village in which he died in. But he will make it across. So I'm just going to read for you about the crossing over, and then I want to talk about some implications of all of this life of Eleazar and us today. So I'm reading from chapter 32, verse 28. Then Moses gave orders about them to Eleazar the priest and Joshua, son of Nun, and to the family heads of the Israelite tribes. He said to them, if the Gadites and the Reubenites, every man armed for battle, cross over the Jordan with you before the Lord, then when the land is subdivided before you, you must give them the land of Gilead as their possession. But if they do not cross over with you armed, they must accept their possession with you in Canaan. And the Gadites and the Reubenites answered, your servants will do what the Lord has said. We will cross over before the Lord into Canaan armed. But the property we will inherit will be on this side of the Jordan. So to back up a moment, the Gadites and the Reubenites did not want to cross the Jordan. But Moses, in his brilliant leadership, I believe, had a meeting and said, but we need to cut a deal. We need them to fight with us and protect our journey across. And so they cut the deal and they say, we will. And remember, your wealth, your possession is land. And in return, they are promised they can go back to the east side of Jordan. And I want you to know that Eleazar is a venerated saint of the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is very large in the Middle East today, and the Roman Catholic Church on September 2nd. So, you know, this story of Eleazar has carried through the centuries, and this is a venerated leader. So what I'd like to just focus on is, Joe, I think you have those questions.
I do.
Yes, thank you. And I want to, in the next couple minutes before we say good afternoon to each other, can we bring this forward, and why are we spending a Sunday afternoon talking about Eleazar? So the first question is, God lived in the midst of the Exodus from Egypt to the land of Canaan. If it is true that God is in our midst, how should we act? What kind of people should we be? Especially in this time of pandemic. If God is with us, how are we supposed to be? Can we be mad? Can we, Joe talked quite a bit about fear this morning in her homily. Can we be afraid? I am. I am. Can we be joyous about little things? Cup of tea, seeing people this morning in person. So if God is with us, can I still be afraid? Because I am.
Should we be
Lenore.
hopeful?
So if I'm afraid, can I turn that over and be hopeful? Because I do think God is with us. Even a year ago in April, beginning of the pandemic, we have to be hopeful. And if we just for a moment imagine Eleazar, gosh, he knows God is with him, but he had to have that sense of hope. Thank you for that. Okay, let's go. I'm sorry.
I just said trusting.
Trusting. That even in November, when I didn't know about a vaccine, I'd read about it in, the newspaper, but wow, certainly we trusted God, because look at it now, that possibility, if you want to, you can get the vaccine. So hope and trust. And I think love. I think that allowing the notion and the belief to be a part of you, that God is with you, even in the muck of the pandemic, that the hope will bring us out, the trust will bring it out. And I think that the story of Eleazar shows that in very different circumstances, but the same notion of a wandering. Let's go down to number 3. God chose Moses and his nephew Eleazar to be leaders. In our own lives today, God chooses people to lead us on our journey. How can we learn to trust those leaders and to trust God who chooses them? So I'm going to put something out there. I don't know if this will work, but so Joe's our leader. And more importantly, Joe was and is your leader during your journey to your new beautiful church. Was there ever a decision that Joe brought forward to you all that you didn't see eye to eye on, that you thought, well, maybe we shouldn't do it that way? Because it's hard.
Oh, it
And it's
happens
hard.
all the time, and I encourage it. I encourage it.
know.
I encourage it. No, I do, because I want
Yeah.
everybody to be in it together with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there was a really great example that I tell the story all the time about, Jim Green wanting to rename the church at the 14-month point when he became the vicar. He wanted to name it Emmaus Church. And the vestry told him,
Oh,
the vestry told him no, but that's probably the only thing they ever told him no about. So it's
that's right.
fascinating, isn't it? Think about it.
No, it is. And I think that especially on the journey that Resurrection has done, you had so many moving parts.
Yeah.
But, as I think Judy brought forward the notion of trust, it is about, Judy, isn't it really about a foundational trust that, okay, we're with you, Joe. All right, if that's what you say. So, and I think Eleazar, the story of Eleazar, moving alongside with his father and with Moses, I don't always trust God. But when I come back, I realize what I was missing. I know many of you have had illnesses of yourself or in your family, as I have. That's a low point. That's what? But when we can come back, right? We're coming out of this pandemic. And those of us that have had the gift of faith, that faith is trust. And reading this story in Numbers, you'll see the battles that they encounter. Their enemies are horrific, but the trust factor.
Maybe there's
Okay.
another sort of example with us in the story, because one of the things people tell me all the time, I've heard and I've experienced during our time in the wilderness, is we've learned some measure of trust, because every time there's a seemingly insurmountable problem, somehow it became resolved, And over time, we began to believe that no matter what the problem was, we could surmount it. If we don't have money, but if money was needed, money appeared, and we didn't have expertise, but when we needed certain expertise appeared. And after that happens a certain number of times, in the wilderness, you say to yourself, maybe I don't have to worry so much about how obstacles will be overcome, but have faith that together we can overcome them.
I think that together is important, that you said the together, because we're not, you're not, I'm not, we're not alone. You weren't alone. And I see very much a village ethos in the part of resurrection that I'm starting to feel a part of, is you had this togetherness feeling. Not that you're all on the same page with everything, that's not the point, but the fact that you said overcome the obstacle and you did it together. So that's definitely a part of your journey.
I think the other thing is that, it's Linda. I think the other
Hi,
thing that
Linda.
I've seen, especially through the COVID, but also through our whole journey, that we have grown spiritually as a community and individually. We've grown spiritually. I especially see that in our Bible study. I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Again, that's I think that's the gift of for all of us, for our own challenges and the broader challenge of the pandemic life and this moving of your church, is that you're different now. It's a new census. You're on the other side. You're new people. I was talking with Joe the other day about the book you need to write, because you made it to the other side. I don't know what next river Joe wants you to cross, but I just know, I don't know all the names of the roads here, but I'm just going to say Quaker Lane is the Jordan River, and you made it across. So you're on the other side. So I think the time has come to an end. Thank you, Joe, for your homily this morning about shepherding. And Eleazar isn't always described as a shepherd, but I think he was, and I think you are, and it's a blessing to be with you this morning.
So
would you like to
I
pray
would
us
just,
out?
yeah, but I just want to add, we can all be Aaron, and we can all be Eleazar. It doesn't,
Yes,
it takes a whole village here.
right. It's not a bloodline.
Right.
It's not a bloodline. It's
But
not
he's a
you are
fascinating guy that we never heard of. There you go.
Exactly. So there's a lot of them. So I just need you to concentrate on numbers today, okay?
Okay, yeah, and I was so glad that both Louise and Lou nailed the books of the Bible.
Oh,
There
really?
you go.
I
You
was
get
gonna
brownie points, guys.
I was gonna do like a trivia quiz, and I thought, nah, I'm not gonna do that. That'll wait for next time.
Reverend Susan, thank you so much. You're always
You're welcome.
fabulous when you
Thank you.
teach us things. So thank you for
You're
turning
welcome.
your attention to this guy that you probably had never heard of either. So you know,
No, I do
There you
now,
go.
but
now we know. And the Lord be with you.
And also,
also with you.
Heavenly Father, we do indeed thank you for this day, for the opportunity to be together and to affirm again our sense of community rooted in you and grounded in faith. And we are just so grateful for this time to be together and learn what you would have us learn. Help us to share your love with all we meet this week, and to think about what Eleazar has to teach us. And then bring us back next week, maybe at a different service, who knows, as you sign up and consider which service God would have you be at. So go in peace. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
man,
Amen. Yeah.
So there
Be
you go.
well, everyone. And I was told, in order to be faithful, say hello to someone that you feel is different from you today. Okay? That's the
Indeed.
thought. Okay.
Go in
Be
peace
well,
and say
everyone.
hello to everybody.
Yeah. Bye.